What kind of person pours cement into a living creek, knowing it's the heart of a neighborhood? The question hung on my mind like a storm cloud as I stood at the edge of Willow Creek, or what was left of it. Once a sparkling ribbon of water that wove through our cul-de-sac, it was now a gray, lifeless slab, suffocated under a thick layer of concrete. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and betrayal. I could still hear the ghost of the creek's gentle babble, the way it used to carry the laughter of kids skipping stones and the soft hum of dragonflies. Now it was silent, and the weight of that silence pressed against my chest. My name is Elena, and this creek was my sanctuary, my little piece of wild in a world of manicured lawns and HOA rules. But Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed queen, had decided it was a problem, a hazard, she called it, and she'd taken matters into her own hands. I lived in Meadowview for 5 years, a quiet corner of suburban Virginia where the houses were neat and the people were polite, if not always kind. The creek ran behind my property, a natural boundary between my backyard and the cul-de-sac's common land. It wasn't just water, it was life. Frogs croaked at dusk, herons stalked fish in the shallows, and my daughter, Lily, spent hours sketching the wildflowers that grew along its banks. I bought this house for that creek, for the way it made the world feel bigger, wilder, than the HOA's endless list of approved paint colors and mailbox designs. But Karen, head of the Meadowview Homeowners Association, saw it differently. To her, the creek was a liability, a muddy inconvenience that didn't fit her vision of a perfect neighborhood. She'd been waging war on it for months, petitions, complaints, emails with subject lines like urgent, creek maintenance concerns. I ignored them, thinking she'd tire out. I was wrong. It started with a phone call from my neighbor, Sam, his voice tight with disbelief. "Elena, you need to see this. They're pouring cement into the creek." I ran outside, my heart pounding, and there it was, a truck parked on the cul-de-sac's edge, its chute spewing gray sludge into the water. Karen stood nearby, clipboard in hand, directing the workers like a general overseeing a siege. The creek was already half gone, its clear water clouded with sediment, the banks collapsing under the weight of the concrete. I shouted, my voice raw, "What the hell are you doing?" Karen turned, her smile sharp as a blade. "Improving the neighborhood, Elena. This creek's a danger. We voted on it." I wanted to scream that I hadn't voted, that no one had asked me, but the words caught in my throat as I watched the last trickle of water disappear under the cement's cold embrace. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Sam, a retired carpenter with a soft spot for Lily, was livid, his hands clenched as he surveyed the damage. "She didn't even consult us," he muttered, kicking at the hardened concrete. Across the street, Mrs. Patel, who'd lived here longer than anyone, shook her head, her eyes glistening. That creek was here before any of us. It wasn't hers to destroy. We gathered in my backyard, a small, angry council of neighbors, trying to make sense of it. Karen had claimed the HOA board approved the project, but no one could recall a meeting where it was discussed. The paperwork she waved around was vague, a single page with signatures I didn't recognize. Something was off, and the more we talked, the more it felt like Karen had orchestrated this alone, using her position to bulldoze anyone who disagreed. I spent hours digging through HOA records, my kitchen table buried under bylaws and meeting minutes. Lily sat across from me, her sketchbook open to a drawing of the creek as it used to be, vibrant with greens and blues. "Why would she do this, Mom?" she asked, her voice small. I didn't have an answer, not yet. But I found a thread to pull. The HOA's charter required a majority vote for any major alteration to common areas, and the creek was explicitly listed as one. Karen's vote was a sham, a power grab dressed up as procedure. I called Sam and Mrs. Patel, and we agreed to confront her at the next HOA meeting 3 days away. The creek was dead, but I wasn't going to let Karen bury the truth with it. The meeting was held in the community center, a sterile room with fluorescent lights and folding chairs. Karen sat at the head of the table, her hair perfectly coiffed, her smile unwavering. I stood, my hands shaking as I held up the charter. This says we needed a vote to alter the creek. Where's the record of it? The room went quiet, neighbors shifting in their seats. Karen's smile didn't falter. Elena, the vote was taken in a closed session. It's all in order. I pressed harder, demanding to see the minutes, but she deflected, her voice smooth as glass. We're moving on to new business now. I sat down, my face burning, but Sam leaned over and whispered, she's hiding something. Keep pushing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The creek's absence was a wound, and Karen's smugness was salt in it. I started asking questions, quietly at first, to neighbors who'd been at past meetings. Most were as confused as I was, but one, a shy woman named Clara, hesitated before speaking. I saw Karen with a contractor a month ago, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They were talking about money, something about her property. My pulse quickened. Clara didn't know more, but it was enough to make me wonder, what was Karen getting out of this? I decided to dig deeper, starting with public records. What I found changed everything. In the county clerk's office, I uncovered a permit application for a home expansion on Karen's property, filed just weeks before the creek was filled. The plans showed a new basement extension, suspiciously close to the creek's original path. My stomach twisted as I realized the truth. Karen hadn't just wanted the creek gone for the HOA's sake. She'd done it for herself, to secure her expansion without the complication of a protected waterway. The cement wasn't just an act of control, it was a cover-up. Armed with this, I felt a spark of hope. Karen thought she'd won, but she didn't know I was coming for her. The discovery hit me like a jolt of electricity, but it came with a shadow of dread. Karen wasn't just a busybody with too much power. She was calculating, willing to destroy something sacred to line her own pockets. I spent the next day cross-referencing the permit with environmental regulations, my eyes bleary from hours of legal jargon. The creek was classified as a protected waterway, meaning any alteration required state approval, not just an HOA vote. Karen's permit mentioned nothing about the creek, a glaring omission that could only be deliberate. I printed the documents, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and purpose. This wasn't just about the creek anymore. It was about exposing her. I called Sam and Mrs. Patel, and we met at my house, the papers spread across my dining table like a battle map. Sam's jaw tightened as he read the permit. She buried the creek to bury her tracks, he said, his voice low. Mrs. Patel nodded, her fingers tracing the map of Karen's property. Her basement's too close. If the creek was still there, the state would have blocked her expansion. We agreed to bring this to the HOA meeting, but we needed more than documents. We needed allies. I reached out to Clara again, coaxing her to join us. She was nervous, her eyes darting as she spoke, but she agreed to back us up if we could protect her from Karen's wrath. The twist came that evening, when Lily burst into the kitchen, her face pale. "Mom, there's water in Karen's yard." I followed her outside, and sure enough, a muddy pool was forming near Karen's property line, seeping from the ground where the creek used to flow. It was as if the creek was fighting back, refusing to stay buried. I grabbed my phone and recorded it, the water glinting under the streetlights like a warning. This wasn't just evidence, it was a sign. The creek's spirit, or whatever you'd call it, was still alive, and it was about to make Karen pay. The HOA meeting was packed, the air thick with tension. Neighbors whispered, sensing something big was coming. Karen took her usual spot at the head, her smile as polished as ever. I stood, holding the permit and the environmental report, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Karen filled the creek to push through her home expansion, I said, laying the documents on the table. She violated state law and HOA rules. There was no vote, no approval. The room erupted in murmurs. Karen's smile faltered just for a second before she laughed, sharp and dismissive. "This is absurd. Elena's upset about the creek, but it was a safety issue." The board acted responsibly. I pressed play on my phone, showing the video of the water pooling in her yard. If it was so responsible, why is the creek flooding your property? The room went silent. all eyes on Karen. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Clara, trembling but resolute, stood up. I heard Karen talking about a payout from the contractor. She wanted the creek gone for her basement. The whispers turned to gasps. Karen's face reddened, her composure cracking. "That's a lie," she snapped, but the room was turning against her. Sam stood, his voice booming. "We demand an investigation, and we want the creek restored." Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel, but the meeting descended into chaos. Neighbors shouted questions, demanding transparency. I felt a surge of triumph, but it was short-lived. Karen leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "You think you've won, Elena? You have no idea what you've started." Her voice was low, venomous, and it sent a chill down my spine. She stormed out, leaving the room in disarray. I should have felt victorious, but her words lingered like a threat. Back home, Lily hugged me, her eyes bright with pride. "You did it, Mom." But I wasn't so sure. Karen wasn't the type to go down quietly. I spent the night researching, trying to anticipate her next move. By morning, I had a plan. We'd file a formal complaint with the state environmental agency and rally the neighborhood to demand the creek's restoration. But as I stepped outside, I froze. A new sign was posted on Karen's lawn, bold letters declaring, "Private property, no trespassing." And behind it, the water in her yard was gone, replaced by a fresh layer of gravel. She was covering her tracks again, but I wasn't about to let her slip away. The gravel in Karen's yard was a taunt, a deliberate erasure of the creek's rebellion. It was as if she believed she could bury the truth as easily as she'd buried the water. But I wasn't backing down. The neighborhood was fracturing, with some siding with Karen out of fear or loyalty, while others rallied behind me, Sam and Mrs. Patel. We spent days gathering signatures for a petition to the state, demanding an investigation into the creek's destruction. Clara, despite her fear, went door to door with us, her quiet courage bolstering our cause. By the end of the week, we had over half the neighborhood support, a small army united by a shared loss. Karen wasn't idle. She launched a counteroffensive, flooding the HOA's online forum with posts about neighborhood safety and responsible leadership. She painted me as a troublemaker, obsessed with a dirty ditch that endangered our kids. Her words stung, but they also fueled me. I started a blog, posting photos of the creek before and after, alongside Lily's drawings and stories for neighbors about what the creek had meant to them. The blog spread, shared by people beyond Meadowview, and soon, local environmental groups reached out, offering legal advice and support. The fight was bigger than our cul-de-sac now. The confrontation came at a town hall meeting, open to the public and packed with reporters from the local paper. Karen arrived in a crisp blazer, her smile a mask of confidence. I stood at the podium, my voice steady as I presented our case. The illegal filling of the creek, the forged HOA vote, the permit for Karen's basement. I showed the video of the flooding in her yard, now a viral clip thanks to the blog. The crowd murmured, and I saw Karen shift at her seat. Then came the twist. A state inspector, tipped off by our petition, had visited Karen's property that morning. He took the mic, his voice calm but damning. The creek's underground flow was disrupted, causing water to back up into Ms. Thompson's basement. Her expansion is unpermitted and unsafe. The room exploded. Neighbors shouted, reporters scribbled, and Karen's face went white. She stood, her voice shaking. "This is a witch hunt. I acted for the community." But the inspector wasn't done. He revealed that Karen's contractor, a friend of hers, had been paid double the standard rate, with funds traced to an offshore account. The implication was clear. Karen hadn't just broken rules. She'd profited from them. I watched her sink back into her chair, her empire crumbling under the weight of her own greed. But Karen wasn't finished. She stormed up to me after the meeting, her eyes blazing. "You think you're clever, Elena? You'll regret this." Her words were a knife, sharp and personal. I held her gaze, refusing to flinch. "The creek's coming back, Karen, and so is the truth." She turned and walked away, but I knew this wasn't over. She'd fight dirty, and I had to be ready. That night, I sat with Lily, her sketchbook open to a new drawing. The creek flowing again, with a heron taking flight. It was a reminder of what we were fighting for, and it gave me the strength to keep going. Karen's empire was cracking, but she was a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. The state launched a formal investigation, and the HOA board, under pressure, suspended her as president. Her allies in the neighborhood began to waver, their loyalty shaken by the inspector's findings. But Karen doubled down, hiring a lawyer who sent cease and desist letters to me, Sam, and Mrs. Patel, accusing us of defamation. The letters were intimidation, pure and simple, but they only made me more determined. I wasn't just fighting for the creek now. I was fighting for every neighbor who'd ever felt silenced by her. The next twist came unexpectedly. Clara, who'd been so quiet, found a hidden email chain on the HOA server, one Karen thought she deleted. It showed her coordinating with the contractor, promising him a bonus if the creek was filled before the state could intervene. Clara forwarded it to me, her hands shaking. "I could lose my job for this," she whispered. I hugged her, promising we'd protect her. The email was a smoking gun, and we sent it to the state and the local paper. The headline the next day read, "HOA President Caught in Creek Cover-Up." Karen's name was everywhere, her reputation in tatters. The showdown came as special HOA meeting, called to vote on her removal. The community center was standing room only, the air electric with anticipation. Karen walked in, her head high, but her eyes were tired, haunted. I spoke first, laying out the evidence, the permit, the email, the inspector's report. The crowd was with me, their anger palpable. When Karen took the mic, her voice was sharp but unsteady. "I made tough choices for this neighborhood," she said. "You'll miss me when I'm gone." But the vote was unanimous. She was out. For the first time, I saw her mask slip, her shoulders sagging as she left the room. That night, the creek fought back again. A storm rolled in, heavy rain pounding Meadowview. By morning, Karen's basement was flooded, water seeping through the cracks in her unpermitted extension. Neighbors gathered, watching as contractors pumped out the water, only for it to return. It was as if the creek was reclaiming its path, turning her basement into a murky fish tank. Social media lit up with photos, some calling it justice, others karma. I didn't laugh. I felt a strange pity for her, trapped by her own hubris. But the victory was bittersweet. The creek was still gone, its banks scarred by cement. Restoring it would take time and money, more than our little neighborhood could easily muster. I lay awake, wondering if we'd really won, or if Karen's shadow would linger. Lily crawled into bed with me, her voice soft. "The creek's still there, Mom. It's just waiting." Her words were a spark, and I knew we couldn't stop now. The fallout was messy. Karen's basement became a local legend. The fish tank, story spreading far beyond Meadowview. She moved out a month later, her house listed for sale a loss. The HOA elected Sam as interim president, and he wasted no time forming a restoration committee. I joined, along with Mrs. Patel and Clara, who'd emerged as a quiet hero. We worked with environmental groups to draft a plan to remove the cement and reroute the creek's flow. It was daunting. Permits, funding, engineering, but the neighborhood was united, a rare thing in a place once divided by Karen's reign. The state fined her heavily for violating environmental laws, and the contractor faced charges for his role. The email chain Clara found was key, proving Karen's intent to deceive. I visited her house once, before she left, hoping for closure. She answered the door, her face gaunt. "You happy now, Elena?" she asked, her voice hollow. I didn't answer. I just walked away. Her downfall wasn't my triumph. It was the creek's. Restoration began in the spring. Volunteers, neighbors, and even strangers who'd read the blog showed up with shovels and wheelbarrows. Lily led a group of kids, planting wildflowers along the banks as the cement was chipped away. The creek's flow returned slowly, a trickle at first, then a steady stream. Frogs sang again, and one evening, I saw a heron, its wings catching the sunset. Tears stung my eyes as Lily ran to me, her sketchbook filled with new drawings. "It's back, Mom," she whispered. The process taught me something. A community isn't just houses and rules. It's the people, the land, the things we fight for. We'd lost the creek, but we'd gained something stronger, a sense of purpose, a bond forged in the mud and water. The blog became a platform for other neighborhoods, sharing stories of their own battles against overreach. I wrote the final post, not about Karen, but about the creek, about how even buried things can rise again. The creek's return was a miracle, but it wasn't perfect. Some parts of the stream bed were too damaged to fully recover, and the ecosystem would take years to heal. Still, every splash of water felt like a small victory. The neighborhood threw a celebration when the first fish were spotted, their silver bodies darting through the shallows. Lily painted a mural on the community center wall, a vibrant scene of the creek with herons and wildflowers, a reminder of what we'd fought for. Neighbors brought food, shared stories, and for the first time in years, Meadowview felt like a home, not a battleground. I thought about Karen sometimes, wondering what drove her. Power? Greed? Or something deeper, a need to control what she couldn't understand? I'd never know, and maybe it didn't matter. Her absence left a void, but it also left space for something new. Sam proved a steady leader, rewriting the HOA bylaws to ensure transparency. Clara, once so timid, became our treasurer, her quiet strength a backbone for the group. Mrs. Patel organized cleanups, her laughter a constant in the creek's new rhythm. The blog kept growing, connecting us to others fighting similar battles. I got letters from people across the country, sharing stories of their own Karens, petty tyrants who thought they could bend the world to their will. It made me realize our fight wasn't just about a creek. It was about standing up, about refusing to let someone else define what matters. I framed one of Lily's drawings, the heron taking flight, and hung it in my living room. It was my reminder, even when the world feels heavy, there's always a way to rise. Years later, the creek is alive again, not quite the same, but stronger in its own way. Kids play along its banks, their laughter mingling with the water's song. The heron comes back every spring, and Lily, now in high school, still sketches it, her art a bridge between who we were and who we're becoming. Meadowview isn't perfect. There are still disagreements, still rules, but we talk now, we listen. The creek taught us that. I walk its banks every evening, feeling the ground beneath my feet, solid but alive. It's a reminder that nothing is truly lost, not if you fight for it. Karen's house has new owners, a young family who planted a garden where her gravel once lay. They wave when I pass, and I smile, knowing the creek flows for them too. The fight was worth it, not just for the water, but for the people it brought together, for the lesson it carved into us. What we love, we protect. And what we protect endures.